What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are here with the Venom Civil War, and the ending of this is either going to blow your mind or you're going to hate it. We'll find out. So what this does is this opens up with Eddie Brock as Bedlam fighting Bedlam. So for all the new people here, what in the world is going on? Well, number one, you will find a link to the Venom playlist at the end of this video. And two, the best way to describe what's happening is to really just explain it, right? So when Eddie Brock, as the King in Black, meaning he has control over all the symbiotes in his universe, when he died, he went to what appeared to be an afterlife, literally a place that was composed entirely of symbiote matter. And that within this place, there were these other symbiotes. That you had Bedlam and Wild and Tyro and so on and so forth. Each one of these different symbiotes represented basically Eddie Brock as he was transitioning through what we would call the 5 stages of grief, and then eventually going on to join what was called the eventuality, which is essentially this kind of multiversal being that is the result of every King in Black across the multiverse merging into one entity. Now, along this path, Eddie Brock will become a guy named Meridius, which is, by our standards of measurement, the sum total of everything a King in Black could possibly be. Full control over their powers, full control over all symbiote matter in existence. It's as powerful as he's ever going to be. The kicker here is that Meridius did not want to join the eventuality. He wanted to conquer all of creation. And so Eddie Brock had basically been working before he became Meridius, literally racing against the clock in order to find a way to, one, stop himself from becoming Meridius, and two, find a way to defeat Meridius before he could essentially conquer all of creation. Now, because this always happens with every King in Black, what Eddie Brock did is he found that he could actually untether himself to this fate, quite literally walk away. And that in doing so, he would not have to become Meridius, which is exactly what he did. But he also did it with the Bedlam symbiote. And that's the reason why the two of them here are fighting against all the other symbiotes. Because what this fight does is he's like tearing these guys apart, right? Like literally, it's a cool explanation that you get here. That one of them says, I'm Eddie Brock, and the main Eddie himself, we'll call him Eddie Prime, that he says, we all are, dummy, just different versions from different timelines branching off from the original, which is essentially him. He says, for instance, I'm the Eddie Brock who just tore your fool head off, which of course is him just kind of, musing with this guy. But again, as these dudes are watching, literally Tyro, as Tyro and Wild are watching this fight unfold, they come to the realization they're not destined to become Meridius, that it was a great lie that Meridius came up in order to essentially keep them from challenging him for power. Because the reality here is that they are all seemingly equal in their abilities, in what they can do. Yes, they're all Kings in Black, but the only thing that differentiates Eddie Brock from Tyro and Wild and Bedlam is either some measure of heightened aggression or how they perceive themselves. And that's basically it. But by them appearing here in this realm that was created by Meridius, right, their final form essentially, that Meridius put forward this ideology, you are lesser than I am, right? I am not really your god, but I am what you will eventually become. And that in that form, I am more powerful than all of you. But that's not the case. The ability to manipulate symbiote matter is the ability to manipulate symbiote matter. It would be like saying that Iron Man with the Infinity Gauntlet is less powerful than Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet. It doesn't make any sense. A person wielding a gauntlet is a person wielding a gauntlet, and that's it. The ultimate nullifier is a whole different discussion though, but back on track. But the thing here is that as they start to realize this, specifically Wild, he says, then I don't have to become you. Like there was never a cage. We're free, Tyro. We're all free. And Tyro responds as saying, after everything we've done, everything that was done to us, you want all of that to be for nothing. I'm meant to become Meridius. It's my destiny to rule this garden. I don't want to be free. It can't be for nothing. So again, that's where all of this stuff comes from. It's how all of this stuff functions, because Eddie Brock will become Tyro before he becomes Meridius. And can we all just kind of look at Tyro for a second and just acknowledge the fact that what he has on his chest kind of makes him look like he's part of the Lantern Corps from DC Comics. He's not, but it'd be dope if he was. But Tyro ends up going after Eddie Prime. And when that happens, the Finnegan symbiote emerges. Now, Finnegan represents denial more than anything else. When Eddie Brock first died and first got here, he denied the fact that he was actually supposed to be here. And in doing so, became Finnegan, right? So that's kind of how this process works. Tyro is the version of Eddie Brock who more or less accepts his fate, and now he lusts for the power of Meridius. So again, that's kind of how this process goes from one to the other, leading to Meridius itself. And so in fact, even when Tyro and Finnegan are talking to each other, that Tyro refers to Finnegan almost like he's somebody else, like he's a wholly different person that is not even what Finnegan used to be. And so as Finnegan and Tyro are going back and forth with each other, Tyro refers to Finnegan as if he is someone that is not him, because Finnegan is what Tyro was at some point in time. Like you, when you were 13 years old. Your 13-year-old self is not a wholly different person, it's just you some number of years ago. And so that's why Finnegan responds and says, sniveling, "I'm you, you're me. I was praying for this, for a chance to break the loop, to prevent Dylan's death," Dylan being the son of Eddie Brock, "and you turn that down. What's wrong with you?" And that's when Tyro's like, "Wait a minute, prevent what?" And he was like, "You idiot, Dylan's not dead, you moron. He's stronger now. He's got his own hive, his own army, and when he's ready, he will be the way in which Meridius escapes." And the response of Eddie, that's not his job. Because one of the things to know is that Dylan, the son of Eddie Brock, is a king in black without truly playing the role of a king in black. And what I mean by that is the king in black is as much power passed down from one person to the next as it is a mantle passed down from one person to the next. The original king in black, the first king in black in every universe, is always Null the symbiote god, because he's the one that creates the symbiotes in the first place. He creates them, he commands them, he controls them. But in every universe, Venom, whether it's Eddie Brock, seemingly it always is Eddie Brock, but whether it's Eddie or potentially some other host, they always destroy Null, and they always replace Null and become the king in black going forward. The difference between that and Dylan is Dylan, because his mom was possessed by the Venom symbiote at the time that he was born, at least specifically within the main Marvel universe, and Ewing is the person that I'm talking about, that Dylan was born with the ability to manipulate symbiotes because he is part symbiote. And so in effect, he is the way in which Meridius can escape his fate, because Meridius can use Dylan to control all symbiotes in existence, because Meridius can only leave this realm temporarily. He can't stay gone for too long. And even if he does, he can't necessarily control all things because he would have to contend with the power of Dylan, and Dylan, of course, would more or less run against him. But by manipulating Dylan, controlling Dylan, tricking Dylan into believing that Meridius is his friend, right, a good guy, then he can use him, and with the two of them working together, Meridius can take over Dylan and then rule all of creation. And so that's where Eddie says he should never have become some symbiote warrior, again, speaking about his son Dylan, with his own hive. We should never have put him in that position. He's not a tool, he's a kid, he's our son. It's not his job to help us, it's our job to help him. And if you're too far gone to see that, you need to sit this one out. And Eddie Brock kills this guy on the spot. And that's where he looks at Wild and says, "What about you, man? Like, do you have any smart remarks?" And he's like, "Nope, I'm just watching the show, checking it out, just seeing what's happening." And in fact, you even have both versions of the Bedlam symbiotes that have actually merged their heads together, and now they're involved in a kind of like mental battle with each other, right? A lot of this is just because the Bedlam symbiotes are kind of dumb. They kind of reflect Eddie Brock when he was like first becoming Venom, and he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, right? Just some lumbering beast fighting Spider-Man. But in the midst of all this, Meridius emerges. Now, this is the part that you are either going to agree with or you're going to hate, but it is gonna require an explanation. So, what happens when Meridius emerges here is he taunts Eddie Brock and even the other symbiotes that are with him, right? He was like, "I'm not very happy. I am not happy at all. It's not that you tried to kill me. I can respect that. It's not that you've evidently broken free of the cage of events. I'm envious, but it shows it can be done. I can free myself from the eventuality, and I will. That's not why I'm mad, Eddie. I'm mad because you're so stupid, because you still don't know what the garden is, do you? You think it's dead symbiote matter that I shaped like clay. There's no such thing as dead symbiote matter. All symbiote is alive, Eddie, just unclaimed by a mind. I didn't sculpt it, I took it. I am the garden Brock. This is my body, this is my blood, and what I giveth, I can taketh away. And so what he does is he snatches the symbiotes off of everybody else, including Eddie himself, right? Like Eddie still has control over symbiote matter, and that's where he and the King in Black are absolute equals, right? He and Meridius are identical in terms of power, and he says, you're alone, Brock, and for all your tricks, you're only human. Twist, turn, resurrect, all you like. Carbon-based cells will always lose to symbiote because the flesh is weak, but you're not the only one who can make symbiotes dance. We're both the King in Black. You think any goo in this garden will listen to you over me? I've got the power, Eddie, and centuries of experience. There isn't one mind in all of space and time that can subvert my will. The kicker about all this is that in the middle of it, suddenly his nose starts bleeding. And it's like, okay, what in the world is going on? And then like his chest starts bleeding. And Eddie Brock looks at it and he's like, is that blood? And like Meridius's only comment is like, my chest hurts, right? And so you have Wild who's looking at this, right? His symbiote form kind of returned to him and it's like, you're kidding. How does a 30-foot tall mega symbiote with Hollywood teeth have a heart attack? And the response of Eddie, I don't think that's what this is. That's not blood. It's just red. And that's where Meridius is like, everything is red. Red as Carnage, right? And Carnage busts out of the chest of Meridius and is just like, red as Carnage. And he's just like, your faces, right? You know, I could have sworn I saw a giant hand burning candles for fingers, a great burning engine. Now there's a god, I thought. So I dove into the black water and went for a swim. But instead of there, I'm here in your heaven, Eddie. And so this is the important thing, right? This is where the confusion has come into play for everybody. And it makes perfect sense because this was the natural ending to the story Death of the Venomverse, when Carnage was going through the entirety of the multiverse, tracking down every version of Venom he could possibly find, killing them, absorbing their powers, and basically nullifying any weakness for himself so he could track down this version of Eddie Brock, kill him, replace him as the King in Black, and seize control of the entire universe, which he undoubtedly would do. The kicker about all this is the current Carnage run flies in the face of all of that. That while he was out there on this mission, Carnage came back to Earth and basically started forming a kind of cult for himself in order to establish himself as God. So I don't know if like Marvel forgot. I have no idea what's going on here. The reality is that we kind of have to wait and see how the Carnage solo series unfolds in order to see where this takes place. Because maybe this takes place immediately after the death of Venomverse, or maybe it takes place after the current Carnage series. We don't know. But the important thing is Eddie and all these guys are flabbergasted. Their minds are blown in seeing Carnage here because they all understand the clear and present danger that Carnage represents, right? Where he says, Meridius, that's the big one's name, isn't it? And he's like, big Eddies and smaller Eddies and little stirring cheese Eddies. It's like a smorgasbord. Why'd I end up in him? I wonder, some past connections, do we link up in the future, both at once? These are the questions I have to ask myself now that I'm a god. Did I mention that I'm a god, Eddie? And so one of the symbiotes goes to attack and Carnage stops this guy on the spot and stabs him in the chest. And then in turn, like this dude just gets absorbed. Like, that's literally it, right? He just takes the entirety of this guy's power. And that in turn, Carnage actually reveals that he's the one that stabbed Dylan, right? That he's actually the reason why Dylan's dead. He says, I murdered your boy, old man. Dylan's dead and you're next, which just leaves the showdown between Carnage and Venom. Let me know what you guys think, because Reddit's pissed, but Reddit's always mad, so their opinions don't matter. So let me know what you guys think about this down in the comment section. I'm curious. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. If you need to get caught up, make sure you click this link to the playlist, and I will catch you all later. Peace.